celebrations in Delhi as the chief guest. His visit marks the 25th anniversary celebrations of the India-French strategic partnership. France has stood as India's closest friend even when other Western countries like the US and Canada more recently have tried to peddle the Nijjar and Pannu narrative against India. Remember, only last year, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited France as the chief guest on Bastille Day. He had urged the Indian and French business leaders to work for advancing the friendship between the two sides. Now, Emmanuel Macron's visit comes at a crucial juncture when India is emerging as a Vishwamitra or friend of the world, as reiterated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi last month while hosting the UAE President for the vibrant Gujarat Summit too. But a friend that, quite like France, has its own strategic vision and independent stance. But there is also a deeper symbolism. Macron is the face of French liberalism and secularism, a touchstone for most other democracies. Ahead of 2024 general elections, attacks on Narendra Modi on these subjects have increased, particularly after the Ram Mandir Pran Pratishtha moment. But PM Modi is also batting on the front foot. He is really the face of an Indian form of liberalism and secularism, as he showcases India's growing might globally with a roadshow shortly with Macron. He also hammered his guarantees earlier today in a rally in UP on a day his campaign song was launched. So does he have a guarantee of a 2024 comeback? We'll take that question to our guests in just a bit. But I want to re-emphasize the meaning and the message out of Macron's visit to India. There are multiple facets, and there are messages not just for Indians, but for the global community at large. Now, Macron had accepted a very late invite that was given to him. This shows that he is truly a friend in need with no conditions that other countries might put. He comes from France, the land of staunch secularism. He is the face of action against extremism by minorities, exclusivism by Muslims in France. And India, he is supporting India amidst criticism on Indian secularism under Narendra Modi. Remember, France is also the most liberal of all democracies and is backing India, which is accused of democratic backsliding again under Narendra Modi. France is a voice of strategic independence. It doesn't always take the same stance as other Western countries, and it coincides with India's vision of a multipolar world. This is where both sides are very alike. France is siding with India while countries like US and Canada are trying to pressurize India into some sort of submission, particularly on the issue of Khalistani elements and the kind of nuisance they are peddling against India. Now, Macron's visit is also in line with the Prime Minister's focus on re-establishing India's prowess on the global stage. This has been a major thrust during his second term, something the BJP and the Prime Minister don't lose any opportunity to highlight. Now remember, India recently pulled out all stops to host a very successful G20 summit. And during this summit, it played a key leadership role to take it from G20 to G21. It also displayed power play at the recent vibrant Gujarat Summit. Who can forget the bonhomie between the UAE President showcased at this summit, where there was a roadshow between the two leaders, and the UAE President also made a rare speech. And recently, India has also stood with the world during the COVID pandemic, which has earned it a lot of respect, along with the fact that the most populous country in the world, which is India, handled the COVID pandemic much better than many in the developed world. And all of these are successes that the Prime Minister continues to hammer on. Let's not forget, everything the PM does ties into his vision for the country, and thus also ties into his vision as far as his pitch to the public is concerned. It's going to take more importance in an election year like this one. Just today, the BJP released its 2024 campaign video, which showcased the PM's successes. Diplomatic relations feature here too. But let me break down what all does this video highlight. So it highlights jobs created via startups. It highlights the G20, the Chandrayaan success, which is really taking India a notch above in respect, if nothing else. Crackdown on black money. Now, this is something his opponents could criticize the BJP government's track record on. Internationalizing the Yoga Day. It was done well early into his first term, but it is still featuring very prominently as far as this new campaign video is concerned. Then, of course, is the third largest economy goal. This is something the PM reiterates every speech. The fact that it's a key player at COP28 summit. The inauguration of the Ayodhya Ram Mandir featured in it, but also featured in it strong relations with the Middle East. For example, I mentioned the recent visit by the UAE president as well. But with Macron in India, the question we ask is this. The Prime Minister is once again showcasing Bharat's might. Is that a guarantee of a 2024 comeback? We'll take that to our guests in just a bit.
जल्द से जल्द देश के हर नागरिक को उसके लिए बनी सरकारी योजना का लाभ मिले। आज देश मोदी की गारंटी को गारंटी पूरा होने की गारंटी मांगता है।
Let's go across to our guest. Joining us, Charu Pragya is from the BJP. Pinakaranjan Chakravarti is former secretary, MEA. Kapil Madan, lawyer and political analyst, leans towards the Congress party. Ghanshyam Tiwari, spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party. And Pathikrit Payan is strategic affairs expert joining us on the show. Before I go to our experts, let me just bring in some political elements as well. Ghanshyam Tiwari, why don't I begin with you? You know, here is a lot of the Western agencies, talking about India in a negative light, that secularism is in danger, minorities are in danger, liberalism is dead in India. And here you have the most liberal, the most secular country's president coming to India and being the face of its Republic Day celebrations. This is a stamp of the fact that all criticism that comes from the West or that Western prism need not be bought.
Good evening, Shivani, to you, the viewers and fellow co-panelists. There are two different things. One is how the world looks at India is a story which has been built over 70 years. It is built on the thought leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, the government, subsequent governments, the past glory of India, as well as what the current government does. The power of Indian constitution and power of Indian institutions. As far as the stifling of voices in India, the fracture of democracy in India, you don't have to go to Paris to watch it. You have to go to the parliament and see when 140 members of parliament are thrown out, when the press is gagged, when laws are passed without any discussion, when the government and the party in government wants to make breaking communal harmony as their prime agenda. There are multiple ways to look at it, and everyday newspapers will tell you the story. As far as the visit of the French president is concerned, it is a continuation of strong friendly ties that France and India has, and the strategic interest that these two countries have together, both at multilateral forums such as the United Nations Security Council, the overall interest vis-a-vis the global geopolitics. And you are right that France has been able to take an independent view of Indian foreign policy stances, and also Macron has been able to...
But this is where I tie the two together. Ghanshyam, just to take your point forward, this is where I tie the two together. Here's a country that believes in its values. The French values are quoted everywhere else in the world. But here's a country, and Macron is the face of speaking against Muslim extremism, of stamping down against exclusivism in the name of religion. He doesn't allow that in France. It's the most secular of all countries. And it's not a country that follows the quote-unquote Western line on India, which is peddled repeatedly as some sort of a counterbalance or check against India. Possibly it's time for Indians too to shed that baggage.
Well, we don't have to go to France to understand how diversity works. India is a living example that it is the European Union that is learning from India that how diversity works.
Sure.
But in the rule of BJP, we are giving away that thought leadership. that is obvious in everyday conduct in society by this government. So we don't have to get their certificate. As far as the French problem with extremism is concerned, that is their own problem that doesn't have any Indian dimension to it. In India, the diversity is not a problem. Many parts in Europe, diversity is seen as a problem, and they are trying to grapple with that problem. In India, it is our strength. That is the fundamental difference.
Yes, it is our strength, which is why some of the criticisms that come, particularly in election years, is that motivated? Is a question I'll come back to, but I'll allow Charu Pragya to respond to Ghansham Tiwari that, foreign dignitaries do not necessarily provide a stamp of approval that sometimes the BJP or Narendra Modi might want to project.
Shivani, good evening. Nobody is looking for a stamp of approval, but we have to remember at the end of the day, the world is one village, and one thing that impacts one country will eventually impact another. India and France have a lot of shared values, the first and the strongest of them being a zero tolerance policy towards terror. I think that's one thread which ties us very strongly. And whatever you say about diversity, the problem in France is not diversity. The problem remains to be terrorism. And whichever section of society is supporting that terrorism, it is our job to take a stand against that. See, it's not about approval from any foreign country, but it's about claiming the space and being proud of the space that India now occupies on the global stage. Now, whether it is India as a country which is exporting vaccines to 150 plus nations, whether it is India as the country which for the first time got complete consensus during the G20, which included the whole African Union into the G20, that inclusivity goes a really long way. What we are trying to say here is that, and don't worry, I have nothing to say about the opposition. I have no time to look at your graph because BJP is too busy watering our side of the fence, and that's what we focused on the last 10 years. We've made sure that every single where you can measure development in India, we have delivered. Every single place. आप simple चीजों से शुरुआत करते हैं, घर, पानी, बिजली, we've made sure of that. आप उसके एक कदम आगे बढ़ते हैं, आप शिक्षा की बात करते हैं, medical care की बात करते हैं, we are taking care of that. Okay. Whether it is Jan Aushadhi Kendra or Ayushman card, we talk about dharma. We've made sure religious places of tourism are touching new heights. The recent one, Hamare Ramji has also come back home. So we are delivering every day, and it was not just Ramji that day. Modi ji announced solar panels for 1 crore households in India.
Okay. So you're saying everything is going together as far as development is concerned. I want to shift to our experts very quickly. Before I come back to how the politics is associated with a lot of what is going on, these are some live visuals also coming in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron now taking a tour of some of the sites as far as Jaipur is concerned. Going across to Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, former secretary of the MEA as well, there's that famous hug as well. There were cutouts of the Macron-Modi hug that were put on roads in Jaipur as well. Huge camaraderie between the two and mutual trust. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, what is the message you read from Macron's very late invite, acceptance and the faith he has shown in India?
Well, I think Indo-French relations have become, what shall I say, across the template, sort of a model, a kind of a growing model of two countries, both liberal democracies, both secular and both reaching out to each other without, the irritants that we have with the Anglosphere, as we call them, the English-speaking countries. So I think we must distance ourselves from all this, noise. I call it noise in the, don't say Western media, please always say Anglosphere media, because although other media also criticizes, the French TV, for example, does criticize, but that's okay. We can live with that. We have a free media. We can criticize each other and anybody else. But I think we should not get so, worked up by this whole, Anglosphere media criticism. I really don't think that is important for us. I think it is far more important for us to concentrate on building ties with our friendly countries like, a strategic partner like France, because we've had a long-term, France was a colonial power in India and it left its mark on certain places. It's a different matter that they lost out to the British. And if they had won, I would be talking to you in French, perhaps. But I think, France did leave its mark.
Yes.
We learned a lot from them. Of course, after the French Revolution, their ideas spread across the world and into India as well. So I think, and France and India both value what we call in foreign policy strategic autonomy. That we are not going to be camp followers of anybody. We will take our own decisions, and France is that way. There's a huge degree of convergence with France.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
They've also been. Yes.
So just to last sentence. So we have a very good relationship with France, which is based on this convergence and based on mutual interest. So I think, and the very fact that France, your first question, that France, the Macron, accepted the invitation when it was known that Biden
had refused it. Yes,
and finally had refused. So I think it shows that how much empathy he has for India and has for the a personal chemistry with the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. There is certainly an element in this visit, Pathikar Prayan, which is a response that even India would like to send to countries like US and Canada, given the latest rows. But do you feel the timing of the French president's visit coming days after the Ram Temple moment, which is being, I would say, largely being projected very negatively with a certain connotation and with certain colored eyes around the world. Do you feel the timing is also important given what the French president represents?
Shivani, let me tell you a few things about France. Number one, the French people are fiercely protective of their own culture, the kind of cultural renaissance that we see in India today happening. Number two, the French people are fiercely nationalistic, and when what they actually apply is hard secularism, which means in 2010, they imposed a complete ban on all kind of veil on the face. I don't know how many of my secular friends would agree to the kind of secularism which France applies. If India were to apply those things, I mean, they would call them communal. So let me tell you, there are a lot of areas of convergence between France and India. Number one, I think on many occasions, France actually felt shortchanged by the West. The recent thing, you can talk about the deal with Australia for submarines, which was to go to France, and eventually it went to America and United Kingdom. And it was a huge deal consisting of probably $30-40 billion. On several occasions, in several areas, France considers itself as an outlier. They don't agree to everything that the Americans do. Sometimes they are compelled to actually follow the line, but they don't actually agree. So I think in many ways, India is following the template that France has created in terms of having technological independence that gives them the freedom or the elbow room for having a foreign policy which is independent. So far as what's happening in India is concerned, I keep on saying this. They have their own intelligence agencies and embassies to inform how India is working. They don't need to read newspapers separately to find out. So I think whether you talk about President Macron...
Are you saying the French don't use this as a stick to beat India with, while other Western countries do? This whole canard of secularism and liberalism and backsliding of democracy, the French just don't use it against India. Certainly the French don't make any statements against India publicly ever.
Well, recently I actually worked on a report on something very similar. Let me tell you, the French newspapers are equally critical of the French government.
Sure,
it's a complete leftist. It's a leftist media. So beyond the point, nobody gives too much importance to what they say. Even the French government doesn't give importance. But the reality is, beyond the camaraderie, there's a lot of realism in it. First and foremost, there are major defense deals which are coming up, and at every occasion, I think the French considers that anything which doesn't go to the Americans, they find an opportunity, and that's a great thing. The biggest thing is, the area of convergence, which you can say has happened over several years and decades, is that the French have never put any kind of caveat when they sell a technology.
Yes.
That's the kind of faith they have on India, and it is across governments. I'm not saying only in this government. But let me also tell one thing. I stated it in your previous program also when the President of UAE visited India, had there been an iota of doubt in the mind of the French President about the election in 2024 in India, he perhaps would have delayed this visit, because that is something that's very important for them when it comes to deals like this. There can be some announcements tomorrow, whether it's for the 26th Rafale for the aircraft carrier, or 3 more submarines of Kalvari class, which is basically the Scorpion, the naval group makes it of France. So I think whether it's on areas of nuclear technology or areas of, whether it's defense and many other areas, I think they believe that Prime Minister Modi is taking the right step in terms of what. In 2013, let me tell you, Shivani, India was among the fragile 5 economies of the world. By 2023, it became among the major 5 economies of the world. So the transformation that has happened against all odds gives them the confidence that this is a country which they can bank upon, primarily because of its economic stability and an independent foreign policy.
Yes, but I think at the same time, Patikrit, the French don't want, quote unquote, a certain kind of India. They don't drive that message. At least, India has risen economically only just yet. But there is no history of the French trying to, insist that there should be a certain element to India. For example, religious freedom. Now, the US has been infamous, and their agencies have been infamous for hammering India on this, when we all know the kind of work US funded missionaries do in India and the kind of reaction they get. But I don't want to step into that just yet. I want to go across to Kapil Madan as well. Kapil, the fact that he has managed to elevate India's position in global relationships and diplomatic ties is a cornerstone of the Prime Minister's stint in office, particularly his second stint. Don't you think that this is one thing that separates him quite a bit from his predecessors, particularly the UPA era?
Well, I think, the recent turn of events, if you, look at it, dispassionately, you'll get to know we had a, strained relationship with Canada. We had a situation where the Prime Minister, the President of the United States, after conclusion of G20, he went to Vietnam and he raised the issue of press freedom and the state of affairs in India. To say that, and he want to give credit to, Mr. Modi just because a president of a country visits here. So I will also remind you that, President of France has visited earlier for the Republic Day celebration back in 2004. President of South Africa has graced the occasion in 2005. President of Brazil has graced the occasion in 2006. Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, has graced the occasion in 2007. Again, President of France has graced the occasion of 2008. Now, the fact of the matter is that we see that, on a Republic Day celebration, we have people, we have guest dignitaries from different countries, and to read too much into
no, not just this visit. I'm saying that during his second term as the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi has particularly focused on India's heft in the world diplomatically, in being a change leader, in being a country that can drive change through its own values without aping Anglosphere or Western values. Kapil, don't you think that is something that separates him? And I'll go back to Ghanshyam and Charu after that.
No, I will just take. Let's take our viewers to a very recent turn of events. What we saw in Maldives. I mean, Maldives. This is a clear example of goal. I mean, it was absolutely not required. Soon after that incident, you have a country where our soldiers were there, strategically, they were there. They have issued a mandate and have asked us to remove our soldiers. And there are now reports that, Chinese soldiers are going there. So what kind of,
No, Maldives is a conundrum. No questions on that. But that's because of a change of government, not so much because India has changed. They've had an opposition party come to power on the basis of an India out campaign.
Shivani, I think if you need an example, a picture of self-goal, so I think, the incident, the way we have...
Maldives was an incident. Okay. All right. I take your point. Ghanshyam Tiwari. Ghanshyam, you wanted to come in.
Well, first and foremost, we have to look at the visit as a continuation.
Sure.
Macron is the 6th French leader who has been accorded the honor of India's chief guest Republic Day celebration, and 4th since 1998. France has also exported the most weapons to India between 2017 and 2021, apart from Russia. So there is clear business ties, defense ties, and a continuation of relationship. to use that and to whitewash the blot that BJP has with respect to the constitutional democracy that India is, with respect to social harmony in India, with respect to progress, with respect to federalism, with respect to press freedom, with respect to women rights, with respect to so many other things, where Prime Minister himself has failed, and his guarantee is a guarantee of failure rather than success, whether it is jobs, whether it is black money. I will not use the French visit as a way to whitewash.
But what about his overall success on the global stage? Hasn't India's heft, India's position, India's respect increased in the last 10 years?
Well, you look at, you start the global stage from where India is. India's equation with Pakistan, India equation with China.
India's equation with Pakistan is much better than it used to be, Ghanshyam, don't you think?
Well, no, absolutely not. And the Prime Minister visited out of turn, he visited Nawaz Sharif. What happened after that?
Yeah, but that was 9 years ago.
Yes, and what happened in those 9 years? What happened with China? Prime Minister
I think we've shown Pakistan its place. You don't agree?
You are contradicting. Is it better, or we have shown them their place?
Can relations with Pakistan be better? I think we've come to a realization it's better to just minimize the Pakistan effect on India. We used to be so cowed down with the Pakistan factor.
I don't think so. We defeated Pakistan, but that aside, I'm saying whether it is Pakistan, whether it is China, whether it is Bhutan, whether it is Maldives, you must start somewhere. You start with Indian neighbors and look at how Indian relationship has changed during the
Okay. I want to take that to Charu.
Just visiting the world doesn't mean that you will have an effective.
I want to take that to Charu. You can talk about US, France, UK, Australia, the world. What about the Indian neighborhood?
I'll tell you why I disagree, Shivani. The difference between India then and India now is that this India stands up for itself. This India does not mince its words. We say what we mean. My friend was talking about Canada. Why are the relations strained? Because we are taking a stand for what is right for our country. And that brings us respect. See, we are not looking for temporary pats on our back from any country, neighboring or otherwise. What we are looking for is what is good for our country. We follow a policy of India first, and that is going to take our country a long way ahead. We are not looking at India 5 years later or 10 years later. We are looking at India even 50 years later, and that I think is the difference between all the Prime Ministers before Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Modi today. It's important we remember that. See, even when it came to buying oil, our External Affairs Minister gave a strong statement. We are not calming down now, please. And if you think that Pakistan is a major factor, let me tell you, today we have decided we don't want to have talks with anyone who's sending terrorism across the border towards our country. We take a strong stand and we'll stick to that.
No, I think I will also stick to the point that while we'll all love to have great relationships with our neighbors, but with a neighbor like Pakistan, it's better that we minimize its impact than be forever mired in trying to please a country whose entire identity is anti-India.
That was also appeasement of a kind, right?
Yeah,
Shivani?
it was appeasement of a kind. Absolutely, absolutely. Today, Pakistan has no bearing on anything that happens in India. It is stuck in a quagmire of its own. We don't wish ill will to anybody, but certainly Pakistan is not a country that has earned much goodwill in India either, and those days are gone. We have turned a leaf. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, you agree? What would you rate Narendra Modi's foreign policy as? What has been the standout feature and where have we lacked?
Well, one area, I mean, just to pick off the menu, is our policy towards, let's say, West Asia or the Middle East, as the West calls it. I mean, we've managed to develop good relations with most of the countries, although they are fighting amongst each other. But we maintain good lines of communication with them, and and our trade has gone up, our people working there has gone up, and we have also benefited from certain countries on defense technologies and things like that. So I think that is one area. Look, in geopolitics and in foreign relations, there is no a steady state solution. In physics, we call it a steady state. But the universe, for example, is in a steady state. There are ups and downs. Look what happening in the Maldives. Suddenly, one new politician campaigns on a particular thing and wins the election, and now is showing that he wants to bring his country. He, or I suppose not the whole country, but he wants to get closer to China,
Yes.
which is keen on finding a foothold there. So these things happen. There's nothing, there's nothing fixed, in geopolitics, and so everybody does that. Most countries do that to seek leverage. For example, the so-called Anglosphere media keeps writing all the stories that they want to write. But I think these are all, an element of leverage that they seek.
Yes.
Apart from the fact that they think they are very liberal and independent, although I know from my inside knowledge that they also toe the line when told. So, by their own governments. So I think these things happen. One should not get too upset about it.
Yeah.
Domestic politics is a different matter, and I don't want to get into that because I'm not, partisan in that sense. But I think in geopolitics and foreign policy, one has to be, careful about, things go up and down a bit, things deteriorate, things improve sometimes, etc. So I think whatever the policies that this government has followed, there are successes, and we could have done better. We can always say that for any occasion. But overall, if you ask me,
Yes.
India's footprint, India's profile has grown in the world much more than what I have seen in the past. So I think
That was exactly the point. How much is India's word being valued? Is that more than it used to be? Has the trajectory been much better than what we used to climb on? Has the graph shot up sharply, or has it been just a steady increase? And I think it's not. It would be foolhardy to not accept that a lot of that heft comes from economic might too, which is why the Prime Minister's focus, if you look at in all of his election rallies and now his election campaign that is kicking off, is about a $5 trillion economy plus a top 3 major economy of the world. So that goes with you being powerful. I think that pragmatism has set in. Working off a poor India, needy India image is not what India is doing anymore. Pathikrit, what do you feel? Has Narendra Modi been able to increase India's heft more than other prime ministers have in the past?
Shivani, if India had not done anything in the last 10 years, IMF chief would not have come up and said that India stands as a bright spot in an otherwise dark horizon. And this is just after the COVID situation when India emerged as the 5th largest economy of the world. So if India had not done anything specifically under Prime Minister Modi's regime, India would not have emerged as the voice of the global south that it is today. If India had not defied the Western sanctions and had taken oil from Russia, we would have been under deep recession, which many of the other countries are right now in. If India had not taken an independent stand when it comes to Middle East, where it stated that we are in favor of the two-state policy, but we're completely against terrorism, things wouldn't have the way it is that both the sides are in support of us. Let me tell you two things, Shivani. A lot of people talk about press freedom. European Union itself banned Sputnik and Russia Today channel the moment the war between Ukraine and Russia started, because they never wanted the Russian version to be told to the Europeans. Secondly, Russia Today channel is not available on YouTube. CGTN was banned by the British government because it had a Communist Party stake in it. So what freedom of expression and speech the West says? I mean, they don't have the modus operandi or the locus standi to talk on these issues. So far as India is concerned, to emerge as the 5th largest economy of the world after giving 200 crore vaccines free, after having taken care of 80 crore plus people, after doing enormous amount of work in terms of making sure that you eventually develop resilient supply chains so that your dependence on China comes down, it is enormous. And against a lot of foreign pressure, let me tell you, many countries in the West are reluctant to allow India to break the status quo, and that's why you would find noise happening. The difference, as you initially asked me, France have never used its NGOs and news channels to create
keep India in check.
For its allies, which some other countries unfortunately do. But the best thing is that India has withstood those pressures and with a smiling face. We are the only country in the world today which has good relations both with Russia and the Americans. Let me tell you, Shivani, what is the fundamental difference in India's foreign policy today? We have said it very clearly. We will no more bend backward for the sake of appeasing
anybody else.
Okay.
Today,
Okay.
Bangladesh finance minister said we will no more be succumb to the Chinese. The Sri Lankans have put an embargo on the Chinese research vessels coming. Nepal signed a 10,000 megawatt hydropower deal with India. So what are people saying that we have lost the neighborhood?
Okay, I leave it at that. Pathikrit, out of time. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. It's evening. The evening is setting in. There's supposed to be a short road show, a Shobha Yatra of sorts that the two world leaders will be holding in just a bit from now. So let me take a break and we'll come right back after that. On the other side, we also get you the big political story of the day. The Congress TMC war of words only intensifying today, a day after Mamata Banerjee snapped ties for the Lok Sabha polls in the state.
Co-powered by.
They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina.
Cutting across to some visuals coming in from Jaipur, where the roadshow, the Shobha Yatra of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron has begun. You can see them waving to the crowd. Quite a bit of a public that has gathered on the streets. They were just at Jantar Mantar a short while ago, taking a round of the heritage building. Earlier, the French president, when after landing in Jaipur, had also gone to the Amer Fort, and they are now going to head to a hotel to hold a bilateral of sorts as well. My colleague Abhishek is joining us. Abhishek, tell us more of what you're witnessing.
Well, this is a kind of frenzy which is happening right now because Prime Minister Modi and French President Macron both have met at Jantar Mantar, and from there they have headed to Hawa Mahal. We knew that at Hawa Mahal there was this scheduled program of Prime Minister Modi having a small chat and conversation, informal conversation with the French President, where they would have tea and do some shopping using UPI. From there they will head towards the Sanganeri Gate, which used to be a royal gate in the erstwhile royalty. But now that gate is of course open for the public, and from there they will go to Charbagh, where Prime Minister will host the French President for a private and intimate dinner. Then again they will have an opportunity to talk about the bilateral relationship, and of course as two friends also.
Right. Visuals coming in from multiple angles. Lots of public there, Abhishek, that we can see. Pretty big crowd that has turned out onto the streets to witness, the Indian leader, of course. A lot of the public would be there for Narendra Modi, I'm guessing. But was there some excitement for Emmanuel Macron? Okay, we seem to have lost that link, but we'll go back across to Abhishek in just a bit. Look at the number of people who have gathered. We were speaking to some of them earlier and they said that they've shut their shops and have come, some from around the city, from outside the city, other parts of the state, to obviously see the Prime Minister. But this is also a special visit because the French President is here. He's spending some time in Jaipur, which attracts a lot of French tourists through the year, and will of course make his way to Delhi tomorrow as the Republic Day chief guest. My colleague Abhishek is back with us. Abhishek, possibly a one-of-a-kind experience for the French President here in India?
Well, of course, this is the second time when Macron is visiting India. Last time he was here in G20 summit talks. That was a multilateral engagement. But of course, French President had a bilateral engagement with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Also, in the last 6 months, it is going to be the third major bilateral that is going to happen. Prime Minister Modi was also the chief guest at Bastille Parade in France on 15th of July last year. And this is a unique reciprocation. This is kind of historic and unique in its own way that two leaders have reciprocated being chief guests at each other's national day parade.
All right. Now, India-France relationship and friendship is one that obviously has endured the test of time. It is also a very unique friendship which cannot quite be compared to other friendships that India has with Western countries. The French relationship is peculiar because they also hold their strategic independence very close to their heart and don't always follow a bloc view. India has also under Narendra Modi recently been pushing a multipolar world agenda away from two polarities, and the French seem to have supported India in that quest and have seemed to kind of want to bridge some of those divides. For example, France notably was one of those countries which was the least hawkish amongst the Western bloc and the NATO bloc on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And French President Macron was one of the faces from the Western world that tried very hard to bring the two countries or leaders, the Russian and the Americans, on the table and work some solutions out. The French have also held certain views very close to their heart, to their republic, and despite again Western pressures from within Europe or even from across the Pacific and Atlantic, they've not really bowed down to certain things that they've needed to do to clamp down on extremism in France. My colleague Abhishek is back with us. Abhishek, just give us a sense of the route that the two leaders are taking.
Well, the leaders have started their journey from Jantar Mantar, which also happens to be an iconic observatory, solar observatory that was used to, track the solar movement and the planetary object movement. And even now, even still date, this is very relevant because the kind of prediction, the weather prediction these two observatories are making, they are very much accurate up to 70 to 80% and predict weather pattern, they predict rain pattern. So in a way, that scientific marvel is was the place from where the two leaders had started. And there is an interesting trivia also about this, that this entire solar observatory or the Jantar Mantar was also a result of multiple consultations that then erstwhile Raja of Jaipur used to have with two of his friends who were astronomers and who used to suggest him how to create this Jantar Mantar or this solar observatory. And that resulted in foundation of the solar observatory, that is Jantar Mantar. There are two Jantar Mantars. Now from there onwards, Prime Minister has they have moved towards Hawa Mahal, which is also an 18th century palace. That is on the way, where they are having tea, and then some artisans are also displaying their artwork. And the French President, if he's interested, may also purchase some of these artifacts. He will be paying them through UPI, in a way confirming India's emergence as a digital transaction power. Because recently when Prime Minister was in France, there was this UPI that was allowed at Paris Eiffel Tower area. So that is the kind of exchange that both countries have been working around for a long time, and very soon we have some announcement regarding use of this UPI in both the countries.
Okay. Abhishek, just stay with me. I'll come back to you. Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, is also with us. According to you, Mr. Sajjanhar, what is the cornerstone of the Indo-French relationship? Is it in the defense ties today or something else, according to you?
No, definitely it is. Defense is a very important element, as you mentioned, but I think it is the trust, confidence and the strategic element as far as the partnership is concerned. Because if you go back, whenever there have been problems, difficulties for India, France has always stood by us. Whether it was 1998 when we had the nuclear test, etc., or more recently on India's position as far as the Russia-Ukraine conflict is concerned, or on the issue of counter-terrorism when we wanted to designate people like Masood Azhar and others. So France has always stood by us. It has always recognized, understood the need that India has. Why did it go for the nuclear test? We knew that there are two nuclear powers, adversarial, hostile nuclear powers on our borders, and so India needed to protect itself. So I think it is the trust and the confidence which started in 1998 when the strategic partnership was signed, and we are celebrating the 25th anniversary. And that is why you see Prime Minister Modi has been to France 4 times. He was there recently last year in July for the Bastille Day. He was the chief guest, and how with alacrity President Macron responded to our invitation as the chief guest, knowing full well that France and President Macron was not the first choice, but he didn't allow that to come in the way of accepting this invite. So
right.
He's here.
Mr. Sajjanhar, just stay on with me. J.K. Tripathi is former diplomat, also with us. There will be some discussions to take forward, some of those strategic partnership areas, particularly in defense. But how do you see this relationship having shaped under Macron and Modi? Has it acquired a different tone under these two leaders?
Yes, certainly. As the other panelists said, from 1998 when the strategic partnership was established, since then our relationship has been growing steadily without any impediment, and especially during the last 9 years or so. You see the sale of Rafale, then the agreement on submarine for India, then cyber security, aerospace, science and technology, defense productions. Now we are going to produce the engines for Rafale here. So these things plus cultural and investment. France is the second big investor for India in India. It is France. So far, it has been $10.6 billion French investment.
Yes.
And besides, the trade, though trade is a charge less, $5.63 billion only. But our aim is to bring it to cross $10 billion. So these things, and France has always stood by us on international
fora,
on
absolutely.
Security Council. Always France has sided with us, and then France, Australia, India, France, UAE, India, trilaterals. These also have worked well, though France is not member of Quad, but then French view of Indo-Pacific Ocean and Indian view of Indo-Pacific Ocean, they are quite similar.
Right. Mr. Tripathi, I also want to go across to my colleague Abhishek. Rabindra Sachdev is joining us, but before I go to him, the two premiers are enjoying the view of the beautiful Hawa Mahal now. All right, let me go across to Rabindra Sachdev, strategic affairs expert as well. What do you think is the biggest thing that India gets out of this relationship with the French? Mr. Sachdev, can you hear me? No, I don't think he can hear me. I'll go back across to my colleague Abhishek when he's with us. But beautiful visuals coming in of Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Modi enjoying the visuals, the beauty of the Hawa Mahal. A lot to see really as far as Jaipur is concerned. One of the biggest attractions in India as far as foreign tourists are concerned. And this city is special because most of the French tourists in India come to Jaipur. And that is why the French president has also been hosted here for half a day. He will leave to Delhi along with the Prime Minister. Tomorrow will be the Republic Day parade early in the morning, at home reception by the president later in the evening, which Emmanuel Macron will also attend. Some conversations, of course, around some of the strategic deals that India and France are working out. Speaking of those deals, I want to go back across to Rabindra Sachdev joining us. What do you think is the biggest thing that India looks forward to from this relationship with the French?
I think the biggest thing that the relationship is that help in creating a stabilized, balancing world order. Right, because India, we are starting our own foreign policy quite independent. As such, and we are looking to lead the global south, and we would like very much France to be a partner and walk shoulder to shoulder with us. Also, we are looking forward to more French participation in the Indo-Pacific region. I mean, in the Indo-Pacific, France, I think, holds the largest amount of territories in the islands, more than the British even and more than the Americans. So in the Indo-Pacific region, France is a meaningful player, can be a meaningful player. So we're looking at a partnership with France, of course, one on the technology sides and all advanced technology, be it defense, be it space, be it nuclear, civil nuclear, that is right. As well as from a geopolitical context, I think the emerging world order or the world matrix which is emerging, in that we want France to be a good, stable partner with us.
Okay, I have to leave it at that. I do thank all of our experts for joining us.
Sure.
Slipping into a very short break. These are the visuals that we're getting from Jaipur, and more of this will be on the other side in just a couple of minutes.
Up and I said, wow, she's doing like a speech like she won. She didn't win, she lost. And last week we had a little bit of a problem, and if you remember, Ron was very upset because she ran up and she pretended she won Iowa. And I looked around, I said, didn't she come in third? Yeah, she came in third. And then I looked at the polls. She was talking about most winnability, who's going to win, and I had one put up. I don't know if you see it, but I have one put up. We've won almost every single poll in the last 3 months against crooked Joe Biden. Almost every poll. And she doesn't win those polls. And she doesn't win those. This is not your typical victory speech, but let's not have somebody take a victory when she had a very bad night. She had a very bad night.
I am going to spend every single day proving to you that you made the right decision. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Viewers, you're watching visuals coming in from Jaipur. This is the story of the moment, the bonhomie between the French President, Mr. Macron, and Prime Minister Modi, very visible to all Indians looking at those pictures. They're in Jaipur, they've gone through the various markets, they've done a bit of a road show. They also saw the Hawa Mahal and they stopped at the Jantar Mantar there, the iconic science project that was undertaken, viewers, so to speak, by the Maharaja back in time to determine time. But viewers, very, very important and consequential this meeting. This is plurilateralism at play in its purest form. India, of course, in an alliance, in a regional alliance in the Indo-Pacific called the AUKUS. The French have always wanted a say in it. They also want an important place in the Indo-Pacific, and India, of course, keeping its options open by engaging the French. This is, of course, the 6th French leader to visit India as a guest for the Republic Day, and Macron will be the 6th one. And viewers, fundamentally drawing us into the arc of yet another very important partnership that India needs to balance out its geopolitical basic play in this particular region and, of course, globally. Remember, viewers, that the French now have taken quite a position against China, and they have been focusing on China a great deal in the hope that the Chinese begin to follow the rules of global diplomacy, which of course the Chinese haven't. Mr. Macron has been a great supporter of India. France, as such, traditionally has stood with India in all its moments of glory and, of course, some of the lows where other international powers took oblique positions against India. We could always count on France. And there is alignment on a large number of issues. For example, when India was being pushed into a corner by the West because of its position with regards to the war in Ukraine, the French were pragmatic. They adopted a pragmatic position. The French have also been very big suppliers to India of military and defense equipment. And of course, viewers, the Prime Minister staring stage with Mr. Macron at a time when once again his government is being called out for playing religious politics or playing the religious card, and also, of course, for taking democracy back in India. The French value democracy. It is, of course, one of the oldest democracies in the world, giving the world the language really of democracy, egalitarianism, fraternity, viewers. And obviously also very, very crucial, it is a devoutly secular country. And therefore, the Prime Minister will hope that the rub-off from this visit will quell all of those who talk a little bit about disparaging about India's record on that score. But viewers, let's also go straight across and listen in to the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, who is giving her traditional address to the nation.
बावजूद हमने कितने लंबे यात्रा की है, तो मेरा हृदय गर्व से भर जाता है। हमारे गणतंत्र का 75वां वर्ष कई अर्थों में देश की यात्रा में एक ऐतिहासिक पड़ाव है। ये उत्सव मनाने का विशेष अवसर है, जैसे हमने स्वाधीनता के 75 वर्ष पूरी होने पर आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव के दौरान अपने देश की अतुलनीय महानता और विविधतापूर्ण संस्कृति का उत्सव मनाया था। कल के दिन हम संविधान के प्रारंभ का उत्सव मनाएंगे। संविधान की प्रस्तावना हम भारत के लोग इन शब्दों से शुरू होती है। ये शब्द हमारे संविधान के मूल भाव अर्थात लोकतंत्र को रेखांकित करते हैं। भारत की लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्था लोकतंत्र की पश्चिमी अवधारणा से कहीं अधिक प्राचीन है, इसीलिए भारत को लोकतंत्र की जननी कहा जाता है। एक लंबे और कठिन संघर्ष के बाद 15 अगस्त 1947 को हमारा देश विदेशी शासन से मुक्त हो गया, लेकिन उस समय भी देश में सुशासन तथा देशवासियों में निहित क्षमताओं और प्रतिभाओं को उन्मुक्त विस्तार देने के लिए उपयुक्त मूलभूत सिद्धांतों और प्रक्रियाओं को स्वरूप प्रदान करने का कार्य चल ही रहा था। संविधान सभा ने सुशासन के सभी पहलुओं पर लगभग 3 वर्षों तक विस्तृत चर्चा की और हमारे राष्ट्र के महान आधारभूत ग्रंथ यानी भारत के संविधान की रचना की। आज के दिन हम सब देशवासी उन दूरदर्शी जननायकों और अधिकारियों का कृतज्ञतापूर्वक स्मरण करते हैं जिन्होंने हमारा भव्य और प्रेरक संविधान के निर्माण में अमूल्य योगदान दिया था। हमारा देश स्वतंत्रता की शताब्दी की ओर बढ़ते हुए अमृत काल के प्रारंभिक दौर से गुजर रहा है। ये एक युगांतकारी परिवर्तन का कालखंड है। हमें अपने देश को नई ऊंचाइयों तक ले जाने का सुनहरा अवसर मिला है। हमारा लक्ष्यों को प्राप्त करने के लिए प्रत्येक नागरिक का योगदान महत्वपूर्ण होगा। इसके लिए मैं सभी देशवासियों से संविधान में निहित हमारे मूल कर्तव्यों का पालन करने का अनुरोध करूंगी। ये कर्तव्य आज़ादी के 100 वर्ष पूरी होने तक भारत को एक विकसित राष्ट्र बनाने की दिशा में प्रत्येक नागरिक के आवश्यक दायित्व है। इस संदर्भ में मुझे महात्मा गांधी का स्मरण होता है। बापू ने ठीक ही कहा था, जिसने केवल अधिकारों को चाहा है ऐसे कोई भी प्रजा उन्नति नहीं कर सकी है। केवल वही प्रजा उन्नति कर सकी है जिसने कर्तव्यों का धार्मिक रूप से पालन किया है। मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, गणतंत्र दिवस हमारा आधारभूत मूल्यों और सिद्धांतों को स्मरण करने का एक महत्वपूर्ण अवसर है। जब हम उनमें से किसी एक बुनियादी सिद्धांतों पर चिंतन करते हैं तो स्वाभाविक रूप से अन्य सभी सिद्धांतों पर भी हमारा ध्यान जाता है। संस्कृति, मान्यताओं और परंपराओं की विविधता हमारे लोकतंत्रों का अंतर्निहित आयाम है। हमारे विविधता का ये उत्सव समता पर आधारित है जिसे न्याय द्वारा संरक्षित किया जाता है। ये सब स्वतंत्रता की वातावरण में ही संभव हो पाता है। इन मूल्यों और सिद्धांतों की समग्रता ही हमारी भारतीयता का आधार है। डॉक्टर B.R. अम्बेडकर के प्रबुद्ध मार्गदर्शन में प्रवाहित इन मूलभूत जीवन मूल्यों और सिद्धांतों में रची बसी संविधान की भावधारा ने सभी प्रकार के भेदभाव को समाप्त करने के लिए सामाजिक न्याय के मार्ग पर हमें अडिग बनाए रखा है। मैं ये उल्लेख करना चाहूँगी कि सामाजिक न्याय के लिए अनवरत युद्धरत रहे श्री कर्पूरी ठाकुर जी की जन्म शताब्दी का उत्सव काल ही संपन्न हुआ है। कर्पूरी जी पिछड़े वर्गों के सबसे महान पक्षकारों में से एक थे जिन्होंने अपना सारा जीवन उनके कल्याण के लिए समर्पित कर दिया था। उनका जीवन एक संदेश था। अपने योगदान से सार्वजनिक जीवन को समृद्ध बनाने के लिए मैं कर्पूरी जी को अपनी श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करती हूँ। हमारे गणतंत्र की मूल भावना से एकजुट होकर 140 करोड़ से अधिक भारतवासी एक कुटुंब के रूप में रहते हैं। दुनिया के सबसे बड़े इस कुटुंब के लिए सह अस्तित्व की भावना भूगोल द्वारा थोपा गया बोझ नहीं है, बल्कि सामूहिक उल्लास का सहज स्रोत है जो हमारे गणतंत्र दिवस के उत्सव में अभिव्यक्त होता है। इस सप्ताह के आरंभ में हम सबने अयोध्या में प्रभु श्री राम के जन्म स्थान पर निर्मित भव्य मंदिर में स्थापित मूर्ति की प्राण प्रतिष्ठा का ऐतिहासिक समारोह देखा। भविष्य में जब इस घटना को व्यापक परिप्रेक्ष्य में देखा जाएगा तब इतिहासकार भारत द्वारा अपने सभ्यतागत विरासत की निरंतर खोज में युगांतकारी आयोजन के रूप में इसका विवेचन करेंगे। उचित न्यायिक प्रक्रिया और देश के उच्चतम न्यायालय के निर्णय के बाद मंदिर का निर्माण कार्य आरंभ हुआ। अब ये एक भव्य संरचना के रूप में शोभायमान है। ये मंदिर न केवल जन जन की आस्था को व्यक्त करता है बल्कि न्यायिक प्रक्रिया में हमारे देशवासियों की अगाध आस्था का प्रमाण भी है। प्यारे देशवासियों, हमारे राष्ट्रीय त्यौहार ऐसे महत्वपूर्ण अवसर होते हैं जब हम अतीत पर भी दृष्टिपात करते हैं और भविष्य की ओर भी देखते हैं। पिछले गणतंत्र दिवस के बाद के एक वर्ष पर नजर डालें तो हमें बहुत प्रसन्नता होती है। भारत की अध्यक्षता में दिल्ली में G20 शिखर सम्मेलन का सफल आयोजन एक अभूतपूर्व उपलब्धि थी। G20 से जुड़े आयोजनों में जन सामान्यों की भागीदारी विशेष रूप से उल्लेखनीय है। इन आयोजनों में विचारों और सुझावों का प्रभाव ऊपर से नीचे की ओर नहीं बल्कि नीचे से ऊपर की ओर था। उस भव्य आयोजन से ये सीख भी मिली है कि सामान्य नागरिकों को भी ऐसे गहन तथा अंतर्राष्ट्रीय महत्व के मुद्दे में भागीदार बनाया जा सकता है जिसका प्रभाव अंततः उनके अपने भविष्य पर पड़ता है। G20 शिखर सम्मेलन के माध्यम से ग्लोबल साउथ की आवाज के रूप में भारत के अभ्युदय को भी बढ़ावा मिला, जिससे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संवाद की प्रक्रिया में एक आवश्यक तत्व का समावेश हुआ। जब संसद ने ऐतिहासिक महिला आरक्षण विधेयक पारित किया तो हमारा देश स्त्री पुरुष समानता के आदर्शों की ओर आगे बढ़ा। मेरा मानना है कि नारी शक्ति बंधन अधिनियम महिला सशक्तिकरण का एक क्रांतिकारी माध्यम सिद्ध होगा। इससे हमारे शासन की प्रक्रियाओं को बेहतर बनाने में भी बहुत सहायता मिलेगी। जब सामूहिक महत्व के मुद्दों पर महिलाओं की भागीदारी बढ़ेगी तो हमारी प्रशासनिक प्राथमिकताओं का जनता की आवश्यकताओं के साथ बेहतर सामंजस्य बनेगा। इसी अवधि में भारत चंद्रमा के दक्षिणी ध्रुव के क्षेत्र पर उतरने वाला पहले देश बना। चंद्रयान 3 के बाद इसरो ने एक सौर मिशन भी शुरू किया। हाल ही में आदित्य L1 के सफलतापूर्वक हेलो ऑर्बिट में स्थापित किया गया है।
The President touching upon several key points, viewers, in her address to the nation. But earlier in the day, viewers, very significantly, it's very, very significant that we mark this. The Prime Minister virtually sounded the bugle heralding the beginning of the BJP's 2024 Lok Sabha election campaign. Interestingly, the stage from which he launched his re-election campaign was the same one where it all began for him in 2014. The choice of returning to Bulandshahr 10 years later is a deliberate one. Western Uttar Pradesh is BJP's soft underbelly. Its dominance here is challenged by a host of social groups, and the Prime Minister is keen to leave nothing to chance. This is especially because the BJP has set itself a target of 400 seats for this election. Ab ki baar 400 par is a refrain often heard in BJP circles. Bagging all 80 seats from Uttar Pradesh will be a beginning, a critical one for the BJP to attain that threshold or cross it. So it came as no surprise that the Prime Minister set the tone with an impassioned speech listing schemes he claimed would guarantee prosperity for key sections of society, especially women and extremely backward castes, viewers, just like the President did in her address. Listening.
हमारा प्रयास है कि कोई भी लाभार्थी सरकार की योजना से वंचित न रहे। इसके लिए मोदी की गारंटी वाली गाड़ी गांव-गांव आ रही है। यूपी में भी लाखों लोग इस गारंटी वाली गाड़ी से जुड़े हैं। भाइयों और बहनों, मोदी की गारंटी है कि जल्द से जल्द देश के हर नागरिक को उसके लिए बनी सरकारी योजना का लाभ मिले।
As if on cue, the BJP released their anthem for the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. The anthem underlines the Prime Minister's Dev se Desh and Ram se Rashtra pitch, meant to leverage Lord Ram's inclusiveness to consolidate the somewhat disparate Hindu vote behind the dream of a Ram Rajya. But more importantly, its lyrics advertise key targeted welfare schemes for electorally critical sections of society, viewers. It ends with the video of Chandrayaan 3 touching down on the surface of the moon, a metaphor to suggest that Modi can deliver anything, even the moon, to voters. Fittingly, the catch line of the campaign song is "Sapne nahi hakikat bunte hain, isiliye Modi ko chunte hain." Now, viewers, the campaign song, the pictures of that are there on your screens. The text appears on the screen from time to time, capturing the fundamental narrative that is being conveyed through this campaign theme song. Now, while the BJP is in pole position, excuse the pun, the India alliance seems to be drifting poles apart, riven as it is by rifts that threaten its viability. After Mamta and AAP dumped the Congress, there is a churn in Bihar signaling a deep and possibly irreconcilable fissure between the ruling JDU and RJD in Bihar. Latest updates suggest that Bihar's government may be on the brink of even collapse, viewers. Who knows? But let's just quickly go state by state. In West Bengal, the TMC goes it alone. It snubs Rahul's Nyay Yatra and obviously, viewers, also snubs by proxy the left. In Delhi, the AAP is setting terms, wants to contest on all 7 seats, leaving nothing for the Congress. In Punjab, AAP won't concede. It is already declared that it's going to fight on all 13 seats alone. Uttar Pradesh, Samajwadi Party insists on fighting on 68 seats out of 80, leaving very little for the Congress, if anything at all. Bihar, Nitish appears to be warming up, viewers, to the BJP. The RJD also has upped its seat demand. Remember, in that alliance, the RJD is the senior partner, having almost double the number of seats that the JDU has in the assembly. And therefore, viewers, it thinks that as far as it's concerned, Nitish doesn't deserve the number of seats that he is demanding. Maharashtra, viewers, very key state for the India alliance. Uddhav Thackeray there is also in no mood to compromise, eyeing 23 seats out of 48. The new ally, VBA, wants 12 seats. It's all messy. And as things stand, the question is, does the 2024 fight appear to be one between Modi's Vikas guarantee versus India bloc's expired warranty? Viewers, I know it's a play on words. I know that the question is loaded, but it has to be asked. It has to be asked, and let's ask it. Let's open this up, viewers, tonight. Let's ask some piercing questions. Let's not sit on the fence. And I'm going to go straight across to the editor of ANI, Smita Prakash. You've seen many elections, Smita Prakash. The India Alliance, the India Bloc, call it what you want to, it seems to be offering only an expired warranty. I'm sorry, it's a play on words, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but it's coming across that as that. And is this fast turning into a BJP versus no-show?
Yeah, Rahul, thank you for coming to me. It is very rightly put that it's this Modi ki guarantee, which is aimed at achieving a kind of a saturation of welfare schemes, that it's, you know, they have this, the BJP has this thing of last man standing, that the welfare schemes should go to the last man standing, and I think that's what they're going on saying in their speeches of all the chief ministers as well as the Prime Minister. And as far as the opposition is concerned, I think today what you saw was 2 earthquakes with their epicenters in eastern India, Bengal and Bihar. For the India alliance, it seems as if eastern India has slipped out of its grip completely. The TMC today hardened its stand. It was coming to this for the past 24 hours, and now today it hardened its stand that it will go alone, and quite clearly said that your state unit is calling us the B team of the BJP. That's totally unacceptable. And in Bihar this evening, it seemed like the Gathbandhan is